Who is that inner enemy, the one that whispers doubts, fears, and criticisms in the privacy of your own mind? And how do you finally learn to confront it? Part 1. We all know this voice. It's the narrator of our insecurities. It's the one that, after you make a small mistake at work, replays it for hours telling you, you're not good enough. It's the anxious voice that catastrophizes about the future before a big presentation, whispering, you're going to fail. It's the harsh critic that compares your life to the curated perfection you see on social media and concludes, you're falling behind. For years, we're told to fight this voice, to silence it with positive affirmations, to ignore it, to just think happy thoughts. But if you've tried that, you know it's an exhausting and often losing battle. The harder you fight, the louder the enemy seems to get. What if our entire strategy has been wrong? What if the path to peace isn't through war, but through a radical and profound kind of wisdom? The Buddhist tradition offers just such a path. It teaches us how to meet this inner enemy, not with a sword, but with a gaze of clear-eyed, compassionate understanding. This series is an exploration of that path, a way to finally disarm the voice that keeps you small, and in doing so, to find a stable and lasting peace. To understand this Buddhist approach, we must first meet the enemy and give him a name. In the Buddhist tradition, this inner antagonist is known as Mara. Mara is not an external demon with horns and a pitchfork. Mara is a powerful symbol, a personification of all the internal forces that obstruct our path to freedom and happiness. When you feel crippling self-doubt, that's Mara. When you are paralyzed by fear, that's Mara. When you are consumed by obsessive craving or burning resentment, that is the influence of Mara at work within your own mind. Mara is the lord of our inner world of confusion and turmoil. Our typical response to Mara is to declare war. We try one of 3 failed tactics. The first is fighting. We argue with the negative thought, no, I'm not a failure, I'm successful. But arguing with Mara is like wrestling with a ghost. You just get tired and he feeds on your energy and attention. The second tactic is fleeing. We try to suppress the thought, to push it down with distractions, endless scrolling, binge watching, overworking. But suppressed thoughts don't disappear. They just go into the basement of our subconscious and lift weights, only to return stronger later. The third tactic is freezing. We simply surrender. We believe the voice, collapse under its weight, and accept its negative verdict about us. All 3 of these tactics leave Mara in control. There is a well-known principle in psychology called the ironic process theory, sometimes known as the white bear problem. If I tell you, do not think about a white bear, what is the one thing you can't stop thinking about? A white bear. The very act of trying not to think about something makes it stronger in your mind. This is precisely why our war against our own thoughts is doomed to fail. By resisting, we energize what we resist. The Buddha understood this perfectly. In ancient texts, there are stories of Mara appearing to the Buddha, trying to tempt and frighten him. But the Buddha never fought him. He never ran. He never surrendered. He employed a radically different strategy. The first step of that strategy is what we will practice today. It is the simple, yet profound, act of acknowledgement. When Mara appeared, the Buddha would simply say, I see you, Mara. He acknowledged his presence without fear and without aggression. So, what does this mean for you when that familiar voice of self-doubt or anxiety begins to whisper in your ear? It means your first move is not to fight, flee, or freeze. Your first move is simply to notice and name. This leads to our first practice. It's a shift in your internal posture. The next time a wave of negative thought arises, instead of immediately getting caught in its story, try to take a mental step back. Observe it and silently say to yourself, "Ah, the inner critic is here." Or, if you like the metaphor, "I see you, Mara." This act is incredibly powerful. You're not agreeing with the thought. You're not validating it. You are simply acknowledging its presence as a phenomenon in your mind. You are shifting from being the subject of the thought to being the observer of the thought. In that moment of acknowledgement, you cut the fuel line of resistance that the thought was feeding on. You stop the war before it even begins. In summary, the inner enemy we all struggle with can be personified as Mara, the force of our own unskillful mind states. Our habitual strategies of fighting, fleeing, or surrendering to these thoughts are not only ineffective, they actually make the enemy stronger. The first step on a wiser path, the path of the Buddha, is to stop the war and simply acknowledge the presence of these thoughts without resistance. But acknowledgement is only the beginning. What do you do after you've said, "I see you"? How do you move from simply seeing the enemy to completely disarming him? This requires a strategy of profound investigation and compassion, a strategy sometimes called serving tea to the demon. And that is the journey we will take in part 2. What does your inner enemy typically say to you? Share your reflections in the comments below. If this new perspective has opened a door for you, please press the like button and subscribe to Buddhism Wisdom, spirituality, to walk this path with us. Part 2. In our last part, we met our inner enemy, Mara, the personification of our own negative thoughts and emotions. We discovered that our usual tactics of fighting, fleeing, or freezing in the face of these thoughts are ultimately self-defeating. We learned that the first step on a wiser path is to simply acknowledge their presence by saying, "I see you, Mara." This stops the war. But once the ceasefire has been called, what is the next move? How do we engage with this inner enemy in a way that truly disarms it? The answer lies in shifting from a posture of fear to one of courageous and compassionate investigation. It's time to invite the enemy in for tea. To understand this strategy, we need 2 essential tools. The first is mindfulness, or sati in the Pali language. Mindfulness is the capacity to pay attention to our present moment experience, our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations with a quality of non-judgmental awareness. It's like turning on a clear, steady flashlight in the dark room of our mind. It doesn't try to change what's there. It simply illuminates it so we can see it clearly for what it is. The second tool is a new understanding of the nature of thoughts. We are conditioned to believe that our thoughts are facts. If the thought, "I'm a failure," arises, we automatically assume it is a true statement about our identity. But Buddhist psychology teaches us that a thought is simply a mental event. It is not an ultimate truth. A thought is like a cloud passing through the vast sky of your mind. It arises, it lingers for a moment, and then, if you don't cling to it, it dissolves. You are not the cloud. You are the sky. This understanding helps us avoid the trap of the second arrow. The Buddha taught that in life, we will always be struck by first arrows, painful events, difficult situations, or the arising of negative thoughts. These are unavoidable. Our true suffering, however, comes from the second arrows that we shoot into ourselves in reaction to the first. The negative thought is the first arrow. The second arrow is our self-judgment, our fear, our anger, and our shame about the negative thought. I shouldn't be thinking this. What's wrong with me? The practice of mindful investigation is about learning to let the first arrow land without firing the second. A beautiful story from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition perfectly illustrates this transformative approach. It's often called serving tea to the demon. In this practice, instead of arming yourself to fight the demon, your negative thought or fear, you do the opposite. You turn towards it. You invite it in. You sit down with it, look it in the eye, and calmly ask, "What do you want? What do you truly need?" Then you offer it exactly what it needs from a place of compassion. When we apply this to our inner world, something miraculous happens. When you mindfully turn towards a negative thought with genuine curiosity instead of fear, you begin to see its true nature. You investigate it. What does this feeling of anxiety actually feel like in my body? What is the underlying belief beneath this self-criticism? And as you sit with it, you almost always discover that beneath the monstrous, threatening appearance of the demon is a profound vulnerability. The thought, "You're going to fail," is not an enemy trying to destroy you. It is the voice of a terrified part of yourself that is desperately trying to protect you from the pain of disappointment. The inner critic who says, "You're not good enough," is often the voice of a young part of you that is trying to get you to improve so you will finally be safe and loved. The demon is a frightened child in a scary Halloween costume. Once you see this, your relationship to it changes forever. You can't be at war with something you understand with compassion. The act of investigating it with kindness is the act of disarming it. So, how can you practice serving tea to your own inner demons? Here is a contemplative exercise you can try the next time you feel stuck in a powerful negative thought pattern. First, as we learned, acknowledge it. Find a quiet space, take a few breaths, and say, "I see you. I know you're here." Second, turn towards it. Instead of trying to distract yourself, physically turn your attention inwards. Locate the feeling in your body. Does it feel like a tightness in your chest? A pit in your stomach? Just be with the physical sensation without needing it to go away. Third, investigate with kindness. Begin to ask it gentle questions, as if you were speaking to a frightened child. What are you trying to protect me from? What are you afraid will happen? What is it that you truly need from me right now? Fourth, listen and feed. Don't look for an intellectual answer. Listen for the feeling underneath the thought. The need is usually something very simple. The need for safety, for acceptance, for reassurance. And then, in your mind, offer it what it needs. You can place a hand on your heart and offer the feeling of compassion. You can say silently, "I understand you're scared. It's okay. I'm here. I will not abandon you." You are feeding the demon with the nourishment it was actually craving all along, your own compassionate attention. The strategy of the wise warrior, then, is not to fight the inner enemy, but to understand it. By using the flashlight of mindfulness, we see our thoughts as passing clouds, not as solid truths. By courageously turning towards our demons and asking what they need, we discover they are not monsters, but wounded parts of ourselves. This practice of compassionate investigation completely changes the game. It starves the negative thought of its power source, which is our own fear and resistance. But what is the ultimate goal? What does victory look like in a war where you invite the enemy for tea? The answer lies in the final transformation, moving from investigation to complete heartfelt integration. And that is the final stage of our journey. What is one demon you've been fighting? How might it feel to serve it tea instead? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this approach feels like a path to freedom, please like this video and subscribe to Buddhism Wisdom, Spirituality. We'll see you in part 3. Part 3. Welcome back. In our journey to meet our inner enemy, we have traveled a remarkable path. In Part 1, we identified this enemy as Mara, the personification of our own negative thoughts, and we saw the futility of fighting him. In Part 2, we learned a new strategy: to stop the war, acknowledge his presence, and courageously investigate him, as if serving tea to a demon. Through this investigation, we made a profound discovery. Our enemy is not a monster, but a frightened part of ourselves, dressed in a scary costume. This leads us to the final and most transformative stage of our journey. What happens after the tea has been served? How do we live with our former enemy in a state of lasting peace? The answer lies in the ultimate victory, a victory not of destruction, but of integration and compassion. To achieve this lasting peace, we must cultivate two final qualities of mind. The first is compassion, or karuna. In our last part, we used curiosity to disarm the enemy. Now, we use compassion to heal the wound that created him. True compassion is the heartfelt wish for a being to be free from suffering. When we realize that our inner critic is just a manifestation of our own deep-seated fear of not being loved, our heart naturally softens. We move from seeing it as an it, a problem to be solved, to seeing it as a part of us that needs care. We no longer want to vanquish it. We want to soothe it. Compassion is the final solvent that dissolves the illusion of an enemy. The second, and most profound, concept is the deep understanding of not-self, or anatta. Throughout this process, we've been using the language of me and my inner enemy. But the ultimate liberation comes from seeing that this entire drama is impersonal. There is not a solid permanent me being attacked by a solid separate enemy. There is only a conditioned process unfolding. The arising of a critical thought is simply a thinking process. The feeling of anxiety is simply a feeling process. The body's tension is a somatic process. By seeing these experiences as impersonal processes rather than personal attacks, the entire story collapses. You take the I, me, and mine out of the equation, and what's left is just energy and sensation arising and passing away. With these understandings, we arrive at the true meaning of victory. The ultimate victory over Mara is not his annihilation. Mara will always show up in our lives, Because as long as we are human, we will experience doubt, fear, desire, and restlessness. The cycles of life will bring challenges. The true victory is that when Mara arrives at your door, you're no longer afraid. You don't have to fight. You don't have to run. You don't have to believe him. The war is over because you have unilaterally declared peace. The victory is when the inner critic arises, and instead of tensing up, you can genuinely smile and say, "Ah, Mara, it's you again. I was just putting the kettle on. Come in, have some tea." Your unshakable peace becomes his defeat. He has no power in a heart that is at peace with itself. You have integrated him, understood him, and embraced the part of you he represents. He is no longer an enemy. He is just an old, familiar, and sometimes confused guest. This state of peaceful victory is not a distant goal. It is a way of life cultivated through daily practice. Here are 2 final practices to help you live in this new relationship with your mind. The first is the practice of proactive compassion. Don't wait for the inner critic to attack before you offer kindness. Make it a daily habit. Spend just 2 minutes each morning practicing loving kindness, metta meditation directed at yourself. Specifically, direct that warmth and friendliness to the parts of you that feel most vulnerable, insecure, or frightened. You're preemptively serving tea to the demon. You are giving that wounded part of yourself the nourishment of compassion it so desperately needs, which makes it far less likely to act out in the form of negative thoughts. The second practice is the thank you reframe. This is a simple but radical shift in attitude. When an anxious or critical thought arises, after you have acknowledged it, "I see you," try sincerely saying to it, "Thank you." Why? Because you now understand that in its own confused way, it is trying to protect you. So you say, "Thank you for trying to keep me safe from failure." Or, "Thank you for wanting me to be accepted by others." This reframe is incredibly disarming. It acknowledges the thought's underlying positive intention, which completely neutralizes its negative, painful manifestation. It's the ultimate act of making peace. And so, we complete our journey to meet our inner enemy. We began by seeing the futility of war. We learned to call a truce through acknowledgement, to transform the conflict through compassionate investigation, and finally, to win the war by declaring a lasting peace through integration and understanding. The most important lesson is this: your negative thoughts are not an enemy to be vanquished on a battlefield. They are messengers from lost and frightened parts of yourself, asking for your wisdom, your attention, and your compassion. Your greatest strength is not your sword, but your willingness to sit down, listen, and offer a cup of tea. True victory is not a mind that has become silent, but a heart that has become peaceful, a heart that is no longer at war with any part of itself. What is one thing you can thank your inner critic for trying to do for you? Sharing it in the comments might help you and others reframe this relationship. If this journey has offered you a path towards peace, please press the like button and subscribe to Buddhism Wisdom, Spirituality. Thank you for your courage to meet yourself. May you be free from inner conflict.